You got the promotion. You passed the exam. You booked the trip. You did the thing you said would finally make you happy. And for a moment, it did. A rush of joy, a weight lifted, the feeling that this time you made it. But then quietly, it fades. The high dissolves. The moment passes, and you find yourself back in that familiar place, wondering why the happiness didn't last. You start asking questions you don't say out loud. Why do I still feel empty? Why does this not feel like enough? What's wrong with me that I can't just be happy? But maybe the better question is, what if there's nothing wrong with you at all? What if your brain was never designed to hold on to happiness the way you were taught to expect? What if the problem isn't that joy disappears, but that we never learned how to stay when it arrives? In this video, we're going to explore why lasting happiness feels so slippery, from biology to psychology to culture. Why chasing the next thing never truly fills us. Why joy often makes us anxious. And most importantly, what kind of happiness is actually worth holding on to? Because maybe happiness isn't a final destination. Maybe it's something quieter, smaller, closer than you think. And maybe it's not something to find, but something to return to. The evolutionary brain wasn't built for bliss. Let's get something out of the way. Your brain wasn't designed to make you happy. It was designed to keep you alive. Thousands of years ago, the humans who stopped to bask in the beauty of the stars, who lingered too long in moments of peace, often didn't survive. But the ones who were alert, cautious, always scanning for danger, they made it. And they passed their brains on to us. Which means the structure of your mind today is the product of survival, not satisfaction. It's why your brain is hyper-attuned to threats, but barely registers a quiet moment of joy. It's why you replay negative feedback for days, but forget the praise you got 10 minutes ago. This isn't a personal flaw. It's a feature of a mind that evolved to prioritize fear over calm, scarcity over abundance, what's next over what is. And then there's dopamine, often misunderstood as the happiness chemical. But dopamine isn't about feeling happy, it's about seeking. It fuels desire, anticipation, motivation. But once you get the thing you craved, dopamine drops, the excitement fades, and your brain starts looking for the next target. In other words, your brain is wired not for contentment, but for pursuit. And in the modern world, where we're surrounded by goals, ads, upgrades, achievements, that wiring turns into a loop we can't escape. We want, we get, we adapt, we want again. And every time we think we finally arrived, happiness slips through our fingers, not because we're broken, but because we're running software that was never meant to make us feel done. Understanding this changes the game, because it means your inability to just be happy isn't a failure of character, it's a default setting. But once you see the setting, you can start to work with it. You can stop blaming yourself for not feeling full in a world that constantly empties your cup, and instead, learn to hold joy with both hands, even if only for a while. The trap of the next thing. We all do it. If I can just get this job, if I lose the weight, if I hit that number, that title, that place in life, then I'll be happy. And for a moment, when it finally happens, we are. But it never lasts. Why? Because your brain is not designed to rest in fulfillment. It adapts quickly. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation, our tendency to return to a baseline of emotional normalcy, no matter what life throws at us. Joy fades. Grief fades. Everything eventually becomes ordinary. It's why the raise that felt life-changing becomes not enough 6 months later. Why the dream home becomes just home. Why the person you once couldn't stop thinking about can sit next to you while you scroll your phone. It's not that these things lose value. It's that your brain adjusts because it's focused not on what you have, but on what you don't. This is the trap of the next thing. We live inside a loop of anticipation, chasing the next goal, the next rush, the next version of better. But once we get there, our brain quickly reclassifies it from miracle to maintenance. And then it asks the same question: what's next? Social media doesn't help. It amplifies the illusion that everyone else is already living in their next thing. So even when we're making progress, we still feel behind, still feel like we're missing something. But here's the truth. You will never reach a moment so perfect that it exempts you from longing. Because longing isn't a flaw, it's part of what makes us human. The real problem isn't that we long, it's that we believe the longing should end once we get what we want. So we keep chasing more, thinking more will finally be enough. But maybe the question isn't, how do I stop wanting more? Maybe it's, how can I want more without needing more to feel whole? The invisible social comparison loop. Even if you had everything you needed, a safe home, a meaningful job, people who love you, you might still feel like something's missing. And often, that sense of lack doesn't come from what you have, but from what you see. We are wired to compare. It's how humans evolved to learn, adapt, improve. But in today's world, comparison isn't just occasional, it's constant. Social media has placed 1 billion lives in your pocket. 1 billion highlight reels. 1 billion perfectly cropped, carefully curated glimpses of other people's joy. You see someone celebrating their anniversary, and suddenly your relationship feels dull. You see a friend's promotion, and suddenly your job feels small. You see strangers traveling the world, and wonder if your life is too quiet. Comparison used to happen within your village. Now it happens across the planet. And the problem isn't just what we compare, it's how we compare. We measure our behind the scenes against someone else's final cut. We judge our slow, honest journey against their best 30 seconds. And without realizing it, we fall into a loop. See something better, feel insufficient, try to improve, see something better again. The goalpost keeps moving, and your sense of peace always seems just out of reach. But here's the most dangerous part. We don't just compare achievements, we compare emotions. You see someone who looks happy, and you start to wonder, am I the only one who feels this way? Is something wrong with me? And when you believe that everyone else has figured it out but you isolate, you stop sharing, you perform instead of connect. But the truth is, most people are comparing too. Most people are editing their lives for display. Most people are still figuring it out, just like you. And maybe freedom doesn't come from having what they have, but from realizing you were never meant to live their life. You were meant to live yours, with presence, not performance, with honesty, not illusion. And the moment you stop racing against everyone else's timeline, you start arriving on your own. The fear of losing joy and why we sabotage it. Sometimes, the scariest part of feeling happy is knowing it might not last. You finally fall in love, and a part of you immediately starts fearing the heartbreak. You land the job of your dreams, and suddenly, you're terrified of not being good enough to keep it. You laugh, you exhale, you let your guard down, and in the quiet after joy, a shadow whispers, "Don't trust this. Something bad is coming." Sound familiar? This is the paradox of joy. We crave it, but we don't always feel safe holding it. Why? Because for many of us, joy has been followed too many times by pain. We got our hopes up and got disappointed. We opened our hearts and got hurt. We believed things were finally okay, and then they weren't. So our minds learned a lesson. Don't trust the good. Prepare for the fall. Don't feel too much, because it might be taken from you. This is called foreboding joy, the experience of shutting down joy because it feels too vulnerable. Dr. Brené Brown described it perfectly. When we lose our tolerance for vulnerability, joy becomes foreboding. It's like the mind builds emotional airbags, ready to deploy in case of impact. But those airbags, they inflate even when nothing's crashing. And over time, this protection becomes a prison. We sabotage our own happiness by not celebrating, by bracing for the worst, by never letting ourselves fully land in joy. Because if we don't have it fully, we think we won't lose it fully either. But here's the truth. Guarding against loss doesn't stop pain. It just delays presence. You don't suffer less by feeling less. You just live less. Joy is risky. It's exposed. It asks you to show up without armor. But it's also what makes life feel worth it. So maybe the question isn't, how do I protect myself from losing joy? Maybe it's, how do I build the strength to stay open, even when joy feels fragile? Because joy was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be felt, fully, wildly, and without apology. The pleasure or meaning paradox. We often use the word happy to describe 1,000 different things: a good meal, a day off, a compliment, a sunset. And yes, those things do bring happiness. But the kind they bring is called pleasure. It's sensory, immediate, fleeting. There's nothing wrong with pleasure. We need it. It colors our days, breaks tension, soothes the edges of being human. But pleasure fades. And if we confuse it with deeper joy, we end up wondering why the feeling slips away so fast. That's where meaning comes in. Meaning isn't always easy. It doesn't always feel good in the moment. But it's what keeps us anchored when the lights dim. Raising a child at 3 a.m., exhausting, but deeply meaningful. Showing up for a grieving friend, painful, but powerful. Creating something no one sees yet, frustrating, but soul-defining. Meaning doesn't always give us a dopamine hit. Sometimes it gives us tears, silence, stillness. But it's the kind of fulfillment that lasts. And here's the paradox. The more we chase pleasure, the more empty we often feel. But the more we move toward meaning, even when it's uncomfortable, the more resilient, grounded, and truly alive we become. Modern life has taught us to maximize comfort. But a meaningful life isn't built on comfort. It's built on connection, contribution, and courage. You can enjoy the wine, the view, the applause. But at the end of the day, what stays with you isn't how good it felt. It's how true it felt. So if you're wondering why happiness keeps slipping through your fingers, maybe ask this. Is what I'm doing making me feel good? Or is it making me feel whole? Because when pleasure ends, it disappears. But when meaning deepens, it becomes part of who you are. What actually sustains joy? If happiness doesn't last on its own, then the real question becomes, what helps us return to it again and again? Because while pleasure fades and achievement resets, there are habits of mind and heart that quietly cultivates lasting joy. Not the kind that bursts, the kind that builds. 1. Gratitude that's intentional, not accidental. Gratitude isn't just saying thanks. It's the practice of noticing what we already have, on purpose. It rewires the brain to focus less on lack and more on sufficiency. Studies show consistent gratitude increases well-being, lowers stress, and boosts long-term satisfaction. But here's the key. You don't wait until you feel grateful. You practice it, daily, even when you don't want to. Because joy follows attention, and attention shapes emotion. 2. Shifting from achievement to alignment. Chasing goals can be meaningful until it becomes compulsive. Joy tends to last not when we check off boxes, but when our actions align with our values. Ask yourself, is this what I truly want? Or is it what I think I'm supposed to want? When you live from alignment instead of expectation, you move from pressure into peace. 3. Choosing depth over volume. We're conditioned to think more is better. More friends, more content, more attention. But lasting joy comes from depth, not width. One meaningful conversation beats 20 shallow ones. One genuine connection sustains more than 50 likes. Slowing down to be truly present, even for a moment, often nourishes more than a whole week of distraction. 4. Learning to stay with the moment. Joy often visits quietly, in the pause between tasks, in the warmth of morning light, in the laughter you almost missed while scrolling. But we rarely stay long enough to notice it. We're too busy chasing what's next. The skill of staying, of choosing to be where you are instead of where you're going, is one of the most powerful tools for real joy. 5. Living toward what matters. This is the simplest truth. Joy grows in the soil of what matters to you, not what sells, not what trends, not what's safe. Ask yourself regularly, what gives me life? What am I doing when I forget to check the clock? What would I still do even if no one noticed? Then do more of that, even if it's quiet, even if it's small, especially then. Because joy isn't just a feeling, it's a byproduct, a result of how you show up, how you live, what you notice, what you give your energy to. And when you treat joy not as a prize to win, but as a rhythm to return to, it stops running from you and starts rising within you. Redefining what happiness means to you. Maybe the real reason we struggle to be happy is because we're chasing a version of happiness that was never truly ours. Think about it. Who told you what happiness should look like? Was it a parent who said success equals stability? Was it movies that showed smiling faces at the end of every story? Was it a culture that equates happiness with luxury, leisure, and control? Most of us inherited someone else's definition, and we've spent years trying to live up to it, without ever stopping to ask, does this even feel like joy to me? Because here's the truth. There's no universal formula for happiness, no checklist, no one-size-fits-all life. Some people feel most alive in crowds, others in silence. Some thrive on building, others on nurturing. Some chase mountains, others grow gardens, and none of them are wrong. But if you never pause to ask yourself what joy feels like in your body, in your rhythm, in your world, you'll keep borrowing dreams that were never made for you. So take a moment. Strip away the filters, the pressures, the comparisons. Ask yourself honestly, what brings me peace, not applause? When do I feel most like myself? What kind of life feels true, not just impressive? Your answers might surprise you. They might be smaller than you expected. They might not look like anyone else's. That's good. Because real happiness doesn't come from fitting into the world's story. It comes from living yours. And maybe, just maybe, you've been closer to it than you realized. Not in the next thing, but in the quiet, consistent things that already feel like home. Maybe happiness isn't a place. We spend so much of life running, chasing a feeling, a moment, a milestone that promises, this is it. This is where happiness lives. And sometimes we catch it. A flash of laughter, a breath of stillness, a look that says, "I see you." But then it passes, and we panic, thinking we lost it, thinking we need to chase again. But maybe happiness was never a destination, never a prize at the end of effort. Maybe it's more like a rhythm, something we can return to if we're willing to slow down and listen. Maybe happiness isn't in the next thing, but in the now thing. The sip of warm tea, the sunlight through a curtain, the moment you laughed and didn't second-guess yourself. Maybe it doesn't shout, maybe it doesn't last, but maybe that's what makes it real. Because happiness isn't about holding on to a perfect moment, it's about noticing the imperfect ones and realizing you're still here, still breathing, still able to feel. And that's enough.